Yeah. Hey, folks, welcome back to the LandFixer podcast. I'm your host, Logan Swanson. We have a really exciting guest today, Brandon Richards. Say hi to everybody.
Hello.
Awesome. And before we kick off with you, I'd like to remind folks that if you are in need of buying or selling land, go to primelandexchange.com. We have some really sweet off-market deals there. If you're a land flipper and you need funding, go to landpartnerfunding.com. Reach out to us. We can help you finance any of your land flips or developments or really unique projects. Or if you just need to reach out to me because you're a landowner and you want some help developing or improving your property for market, you can reach out to me at the landfixer@gmail.com and we'd be very happy to work with you. And introducing our guest today, Brandon Richards. You are a real estate investor and you're also the host of the Fearless Pursuit of Freedom podcast. Thank you for joining us. And please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, as you said, my name is Brandon Richards. My wife and I, we live in Flagstaff, Arizona. We've been in real estate for just about 10 years. Long story short, didn't know anything about real estate. I owned a carpet cleaning company. And, when you search, online how to make more money, real estate always comes up. And so I thought the obvious thing to do was to get my real estate license. Did that, learned really quick. You're not going to get rich doing that unless you build a massive team. And I certainly did not want to do that either. So started learning about wholesaling, flipping, bought some apartments, storage. And just unless you're flipping, I guess everybody's business is different, but it's just this rat race that I just put myself into. It's always the next deal, the next deal, the next deal. Mm-hmm. So then we got the apartment storage, some rentals, try to get some passive income coming. And then I was like, dude, well, I'm going to buy an $80,000, $150,000 house and make $150 a month. This is stupid. So then we got on the land, and that's what we've been doing this year. And our land notes are making us $500, $1,200, $1,800 a month on a single property. So we concentrate on land. I do a little bit of flipping. If in the beginning when I was flipping, it was like, okay, if I can make $20,000, done, I'm going to buy it. Now I don't bother unless I'm going to make $75,000. It's just I've got too much going on and I don't want to bother with it. So we do very little flipping now, but we do manufactured home placements. So I'll go buy an old single wide, tear it down, and place a new double wide. And it is a million times easier than flipping. I mean, it's like builders. I got a lot of builder buddies. They have a lot of the same processes set up, except that I'm dealing with the same 6 contractors every single time. There's no uh-ohs. There's no, oh shit, there's some mold. It's easy peasy every single time. And everyone is close to, if not more than 6-figure profit. And I'm happy as can be with continuing on doing that.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I think it's really relatable for a lot of folks that have done land flipping. My partner, he started with, he still has a bunch of rental homes. He still has a big portfolio there, but he's just like, this sucks. I mean, you're a landlord for life. Yes, there's benefits. There's a lot of drawbacks. So when he got into land, he was like, oh, look at these crazy margins. Oh my gosh, this will be great. But there's a lot of headaches and cash flow issues in land. So we got kind of wise to that. Then we opened our funding company. So we do flips and funding. And where my heart's kind of been, and I'm glad to talk to you today, is I want to go and do something where I can get a higher cash return per property. Right. So, and that's where improvements come in. And I had a remodeling company for a stint. I'm familiar with construction, but I wouldn't say that I'm qualified to go build a home right now. So that's kind of what I've been thinking of, is either manufactured homes or double wide homes, or, some sort of, pre-created, drop it on a lot. And then, right, you're saying try to get $100,000. Our spread on a land deal is ideally $50,000. So if we could make that $100,000, that's awesome. How many of those do you need to do a year to be a pretty happy person, right?
Oh, well, in theory, only one.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess probably the best place to start is, all right, so if someone was going to try to do this for themselves, they would have to go source land, right? And I'm guessing you're operating in county areas, right? Or are you actually in cities?
Both. I'm in city too. Yeah.
And is utilities probably a big part of your underwriting when you're acquiring the land?
Yeah. So I bought in 4 different neighborhoods. There's an area outside of Flagstaff called Williams that has no utilities on site. Typically, there's only power, typically at the street or across the street or down the street. So we got to bring that in. And then it's cistern tank and septic systems. So those septic systems, if we get lucky, is a standard system at $15,000. If we have to go alternative, man, some of them with Well, with my driveway, I've had a couple of them go up to $65,000 just for my septic
Woo.
system and road. So it gets a little pricey. So, and then I've got some that are in the county that have all the utilities on site. So those are much easier, obviously, than we just trench in the new lines because I don't leave anything old behind from the old units. And then I actually have my very first city property right now, but it's all same processes, except just a different governing body.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Arizona, specifically our county, we have snow load issues. We get more snow in Flagstaff than almost all of the North America primarily.
Really?
And yeah, so we have to build these houses at 60-pound snow loads, and we have 2x6 framed walls. We have to put in full concrete, 32-inch frost depth footings. It's gotten a little bit trickier over the past couple of years, but there's still a tremendous amount of spread and it's still worth doing.
So, how is there an opportunity for you, right? Because you would think that if you were a manufactured home builder,
Mhm.
like you would try to capitalize on this, right? Wouldn't you? Are you competing with them directly, or is there still a lot of opportunity for folks doing what you're doing?
Oh, there's tons of opportunities. So the big brands are Cavco, that's a Berkshire Hathaway product. They also own Schultz. There's probably a dozen different manufacturers. Those are the two big ones that I've been buying from. But they're in the business of building the manufactured homes, the single wides and double wides. But their biggest one is financing those double wides or those homes to end buyers. That's where most of their money is made.
Mm-hmm.
That's where, Berkshire's on the back end of that, just pulling in all the interest. So it's just like Canon, they don't make money off their printers, they make money off their ink.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not in the business of placing them themselves. But you all those big corporations, now that I'm thinking about it, you've got Berkshire building the house and financing the houses, and then you got Blackstone coming in and buying the whole communities out. So it's kind of like you're playing in this weird world with the big guys, but you're the little guy at the bottom doing onesie twosies, and you get to learn all the cool, intricate details of the guys doing it in the big world.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's cool. In my experience, I've always found that folks can make things seem more simple than they are. That's a tendency, right? So
Sure.
where is like the complexity and headache? And maybe you want to cite a specific example when it comes to, placing these double wides.
I haven't run into too many problems. I got a horror story I can go into, but it's a long story, but it's not in regards to necessarily placing a brand new one. But the only hurdles that I run into on these is one, in my area, land is very, very expensive. So my cheapest lot that I bought was 7,000 square feet for 95,000. My most recent couple have been 158, 160, 140, very expensive up here in Flagstaff. And that my last one is 4,500 square feet, tiny lot, paid 140,000 for it, but it's going to sell for 450,000. So our affordable housing is double wides in my area, and so
Mm-hmm.
the price point is just much higher. So that's how we were able to pull the six figures. But in regards to problems, trees, I hate cutting down trees. Every once in a while, I got to pull down some trees, and then I'm in a mountain town. So if we've got a lot that's not flat, and I've got to do a bunch of dirt work, your eyes can deceive you, and you're like, oh, that's a gentle slope. But when you get to chopping at it and you run the laser on it, you're like, oh, where the hell did I get a 3-foot cut from? And it gets pretty
Mm-hmm.
expensive for the earthwork and then the removal of the dirt if you can't leave it on site.
Yep.
And a lot of rock, that's been a problem. But dude, honestly, the reason I love it and I keep doing it, even though the state's being kind of a pain in the butt right now, is there isn't the same problems that you run into when you're remodeling houses. You're not going to accidentally pop a tile off a shower wall and be like, well, shit, there's some mold. Or you pull a vanity off and all the insulation is exposed and you see that there's 16 rats living in the wall. So you just don't run into the same issues. Outside of that, back to it's just very expensive. So finding the money to finance them has been cumbersome over the years. But overall, pretty easy. I don't like saying that because like you said, like everybody says, well, you can get into real estate, no money out of pocket, which in theory is true, right? We all know that now, but it's thrown out there like it's nothing, but in reality, it is pretty easy in the manufactured world.
Yeah, and that was my next question is in land specifically, big issue is capital, right? There's
Yeah.
not a lot of bank products that support flipping vacant land. So oftentimes people are going to private partners, they're JVing on deals. And I know in my early career, I gave away a huge amount of, not gave it away, but
Right.
before I had access to like lines of credit and things like that, I had to
Mhm.
pay an exorbitant rate for money.
Yep.
So is it better when you're putting a double wide on there to go get bank products that are, at an affordable interest rate?
I've never once gone to a bank.
Oh,
So since
wow.
day one, I've either been hard money or private money. So I've been pretty fortunate in that regard. And that's just because I've always been open to networking and meeting new people. And then I'm not afraid to pay, 12, 13, 14 points to get a loan because I understand what the opportunity loss is for if I don't buy the property. So the expensive money's never been too much of a deal breaker for me. But since I've been in land this year, I know what you mean when you're funding land.
Hmm.
Some of these lenders are asking for 10 points a month
Sure.
or 50-50 splits or even higher depending on the price point. And so for me though, in my land experience, it's been pretty easy because I've had such a long relationship with my private lenders that I'm like, hey, I got another one, 15,000, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is. Normally we do 12. Let's do 14 and I'll pay 4 points up front or something. And I'll just always negotiate that. And, if it pays off early, then I'll pay him more points. So I'm always just like oversharing with my lenders.
Yeah, and that's kind of the benefit of having a long track record with
Yeah.
with folks. And that's why money is so expensive when you start. You're like, because you're usually going to people who, one, think you're caught up in some sort of like scheme, right? You're
Mhm.
like, I'm just going to go buy land for half and sell
Right.
it for twice as much. And they're like, no, that's ridiculous. How does that work?
Right.
So yes, and I have a funding company and it is expensive money. And
Mhm.
now that I've operated a funding company for a few years, I get it
Yeah.
because especially if you're working with someone who's unable or unwilling to put their own money into the deal, you are holding everything, right? And we've had
Right.
operators that, default and just walk away from deals.
Mhm.
We've missed things in our underwriting, which made things incredibly expensive. And then just this last year, everything kind of slowed down in the land
Yeah.
market. So for funding companies, you're kind of operating most effectively when you're cycling your money multiple times a year, but you drop in profitability dramatically if you can only cycle your money once in a year, because of all the different properties that are on market for too long. So
Yep.
there's good reason for it, but it is expensive. And that's kind of why I ended up starting it is because I felt it
Yeah.
was predatory 3 years ago. It's
Yeah.
like somebody wants half the profit. Okay. Well, that's
Yeah.
pretty wild.
Well, in a sense, there's not a whole lot of risk in land, but there's a lot of risk in land because if you miss one marker, one code in your city ordinances, or like I learned of this weird study they have to do in a certain part of Florida that there's a certain turtle that you have to do an endangered species study
Yep.
that costs like $5,000. And if it's determined that you can't do anything with that land, well, bye money.
Yep.
So there's like I said, there's in some forms there's less risk, but it's almost more risky if you miss a key thing in your underwriting. Like you said, I know a guy, and I won't call him out because I don't know all the details, but he raised $2 million for a piece of land, didn't do his proper due diligence, closed on it, and it turns out he can't even do what he wanted to do with it. And he's like, "Sorry, didn't catch it. I'll get you back on the next one." Well, what the hell are you going to do with that $2 million property? What in between now and then? You should have had multiple exit strategies. And so that, stuff like that is why a lot of lenders like, hey, I need either a lot of skin in the game or I need a bigger cut for the risk.
Yeah. And people, this is one of the things that's happened in land a lot too, is everybody says it's so simple.
Mm-hmm.
If you compare, and yes, it's kind of more simple than a house, but if, like you said, if you make one small error, that can be very expensive.
Yeah.
And there's signs. I think a lot of people, if you have somebody who's very anxious to sell you a piece of property at half the
Mm-hmm.
value, then
Yeah.
you might want to question that a little bit. you know,
Right.
so it tends to be the people that are earlier on in their career that are going to get stuck with the stinker. But man, that's terrifying. Raising $2 million and having that.
Yeah. And it was his first land deal. And I'm like, dude, he
He went
never
straight
felt,
to 2 million, huh?
uh, I mean, he's like a decently nice guy and he's getting pretty good at rentals and flips. And so he's got, a decent Rolodex of private money lenders and he was able to pitch him on it. And unfortunately, he didn't do his due diligence.
That's rough. So back to these manufactured homes, one of the concerns I think some people will have is just like build quality on
Yeah.
some of these structures. How would you rate that? I mean, since you're familiar with the standard home
Mhm.
construction right now, how does that compare to something that's kind of prefab?
Dude, some of these, at least the ones I get. So I buy a base model and I upgrade just a couple of things. I want to make sure that I have GFCI outlets outside. I want a hose bib outside, and that's it. I don't do anything fancy. I still leave in the laminate flooring. I do basic builder's grade carpet, but these houses are built so well nowadays that it's not like in the 90s or 80s or even early 2000s when you go to your buddy's house and he's living in a park or somewhere out in the country like I did in Texas, where you walk in and it's like, oh, it's certainly a low quality build. Like I
Mhm.
said, these ones that I'm buying are 2x6 walls. These
Yeah.
things are more structurally sound than most stick built houses built throughout Dallas and Phoenix. They're very, very sturdy. And even now, the cabinetry is built with plywood construction. They still have the cheap faces, but you can upgrade every single thing in that house and still be into it much less per square foot than you can to build a normal stick built house. And even you can change off your front facades to make it look like a standard stick built house too. So it doesn't even have to look like a manufactured anymore.
Yeah, and I really do think that's the benefit of building in a controlled environment, right?
Yeah.
You're able to do things more repetitively and it's much more efficient process. Yeah, I remember I remodeled my mother-in-law's mobile home
Mhm.
that's from the 90s, I think. And I was just shocked at one, the quality was, terrible, but there was just nothing standard construction about them. You can go to Home Depot and buy anything
Mhm.
comparable to what's in there. It's all like, compressed foam insulation. Like that was the insulation. It was like a half an
Yeah.
inch, maybe an inch of insulation. Everything was custom aluminum. It was crazy. Yeah. It's effectively a big soda can that people have,
Yeah. And it's horrible because nothing, like you said, you can't go to Home Depot and get a single thing. You can't get a sliding glass door because the ones that come in these manufactured homes or the older ones. These newer ones are actually standard size. You'll get a 36-inch front door, 32-inch interior doors, 34, 36-inch back door. So these are all pretty standard things nowadays, same fixtures, but those old ones, you can't go to Home Depot and get a new fixture for your bathroom. You can't go get a new window. You can't go get a front door because everything's different. And a lot of them, especially the interior walls, are built out of 2x2s. So we're
Mhm.
going to get a 2x2 jam for a door on a 30-inch frame hollow core. It's pretty hard. You got to go to a custom door shop. And then same thing for the plumbing.
Yep.
The old ones just, I don't even know what the material is called. It's not modern day PEX, but it was a plastic that was ultra brittle, especially in the cold regions. It was always cracking. And so now we've got PEX, copper underneath between the transitions on the two sides. We got 2x4 walls inside, full textured drywall insides. Like it looks like a normal stick built house when you go into these things.
Yeah, well, that's incredible. That's good to hear because we have this is something I've considered in a few communities specifically where I know I
Mhm.
can go get very affordable land. Is if there's a home on it, it moves quickly. But if there's not a home on it, it sits. Like that's
Yeah.
not uncommon in some of these areas, about now I'm in Dallas here. So, within an hour of Dallas or so, a lot of opportunity for that.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, I
there's a lot
started in
of,
Dallas.
yeah. So did you ever work with Clayton Homes or do you know any providers that are
We
local
bought a few
here?
Claytons. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. Yeah, we've tried selling lots to Clayton before, and they're not good buyers.
No.
So
Yeah.
I was like, maybe they just want me to buy their their product.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta find a dealer because somebody coming off the streets to go put a house on the lot they already own as a regular homeowner occupant, they're gonna pay 30, 40, 50% more than you and I will if we go to a dealer. And I'm buying 1,600, 1,800 square foot houses for 130,000, but that exact house is going to cost a retail buyer 180, $220,000 because they want the financing on the back end because they're going to bring their banks in because nobody else is going to finance. That's personal property until you affix it to the property. And
Right.
so nobody's going to finance it.
Right. So you have no issues getting a mortgage for your end buyers. Right. Because it's just treated like any other standard retail.
Right. Once it's on the lot set up and quote unquote affixed.
Mm.
In Arizona, you got to file it. You got to have the proper anchoring systems, and then you file it with the DMV, and then it's technically affixed, and then it's real property versus personal.
Interesting. So you have to incorporate the DMV
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's a vehicle, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to put in, septic. You said a cistern for like
Yeah.
a water catchment system, or is there like, how does the water
It's
work
just a
over
big
there?
tank. Big tank.
Okay.
Well, in the city and in certain parts of the county, it's all either private utility
Mhm.
or city water. But this is out in an area that doesn't have any utilities aside from power. And
Mhm.
so they use cistern tanks, which is basically a 2,500 or a 5,000 gallon tank, which a private company will come either fill it up for a
Fill
few
'em.
cents a gallon, or you can bring your own water. And then you got the electrical pump it in the house, 60, 80 PSI, whatever it is. And if runs like normal, you just got to remember, hey, my water might run out if
Yeah.
too many people are taking showers.
Do they have a water catchment system built on houses then with like gutters and everything?
Some of them do. I wouldn't imagine that too many people are pushing that into their cistern because of, well, the filtering requirements for just
Hmm.
general debris and then the cleanliness of it. But I'm sure some people do.
Yeah, because my wife and I, we were just in Hawaii and we
Mhm.
rented a home that had a water catchment system because they have no water utility,
Yeah.
and it was pretty interesting. I didn't really know what that would look like. So are yours like kind of plastic tanks you're burying?
Yeah. There's
Okay,
both options. You can bury them or leave them above ground,
okay.
depending on which one you buy.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked. The catchment system that they had was effectively just like a pool that was under their deck.
Really?
That's all. Yeah, that's like all it
Huh.
was. And then they had filtration systems that led into the house. But yeah,
Yeah.
all their gutters poured into this, which was effectively a pool under a deck that was kind of boxed in, so nothing was blowing into it. It was
Really?
very interesting. Yeah. So the quality's good. There's no issues banking on it. How about any other improvements that you're doing? Is it like, are you going to put a fence in? I mean, you said driveways or anything other improvements that you're going to do?
Mm, I just do primarily what's required of me by the county or the city. And that's going to be a standard because these are typically 1 to 3, 4 feet off the ground. So you got to have a staircase, at
Hmm.
least 3 feet wide, 4 inches between all the railings and all that. Outside of that, they don't require anything other than we have to do now in our area, we have to do CME block skirt walls, which in the beginning we were allowed to choose between wood, concrete board, or CME block for our skirt walls. Now they require skirt walls with rebar, the schedule, full grout. Like
Wow.
it's getting a little out of hand, but yeah, it's there's a lot of those things that are required now in my area. Certainly in other areas, that none of this will be necessary. And we used to be able to put them on metal piers with plastic footings. Now we have to do full 12-inch rebar and forest footings where the piers are at, and then our exterior walls had to be 32 inches deep. Little ridiculous, but it's what it is.
Yeah. Do you have to have any sort of sub pump system? Because I'm guessing you have that crawl space underneath.
No, we don't have, because some pumps are for flooding issues. We don't have any issues like that necessarily. If there's a drainage issue on the property, that's addressed in the grading
Great.
permit
Yeah.
and in the building permit. So that's one thing we certainly keep in mind when we're placing the home and cutting in the footprint for it. But we're not required to do any of that.
So what's the usual timeline? Are you trying to get one of these turned around in like 6 months?
If everything goes right, I can get it done in 4 months.
Golly, that's
Yeah.
nuts.
Yeah.
All the way to sold and out the door?
But yeah, it's been the fastest one. It's been about 4 months. Some of them take 5, 6 months, but except for the one I'm doing right now, because they just changed the state requirements again, they've all been under 6 months.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So how many have you done so far?
8, 9, 10 or something.
That's really
Yeah, I just
cool.
started doing that last year or 23.
So you're gonna try to double down in this? Like, do you have, well, I guess everybody's talking about their goals for
Mhm.
2025. Are you trying to do like 20 in 2025 or something?
Man, I would love to, but like I said, in my area, one is very expensive. So getting the private financing, because I have to do about 340, 350,000 to get them all done, depending on my land purchase.
Mm-hmm.
So getting that many done is quite a few $1 million. And I just don't know that many private lenders yet. And then we're in a landlocked area. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Flagstaff, but we
Mm-mm.
have national forest 360 degrees around us. We're encapsulated. And the opportunity to buy more lots is pretty low right now. Our area is a college town and a ski town. So a lot of these affordable homes are owned by people down in Phoenix because they can buy a 200, 300, $400,000 mobile home and get their their vacation home. And so there's not many people are selling, and I'm marketing to every single person in the county. And it's been a slow, gradual growth.
Yeah. So you have a limited clientele of land sellers. You just have to keep
Yeah.
hitting them and hitting them.
Yep.
Man, have you thought about expanding into another area, or do you feel like you really have to be boots on the ground for this sort of project?
I don't have to be boots on the ground. The downside is most lenders would like you to be boots on the ground because
Hmm.
there's a lot of risk for them in this specific model because when you're getting a loan for any real estate asset, it's backed by the property. But if you're getting a $300,000 loan on $100,000 lot, where is see it? So
Hmm.
they're providing the money for the land and then the money for the mobile home purchase, but where's the real collateral? It
Right.
isn't necessarily there. So that person has to have some sort of history with you to have gained that trust to do a project like that. That's one of the downsides as well.
Yeah. So you getting your land below market?
Yes, kind of, sort of. So
Yeah.
the numbers work so well. If somebody pushes back a lot, I'm not happy to pay, but I'm willing to pay close to market value.
Yeah.
So, and then our zoning regulations, there's only 3 neighborhoods in our entire city and local county. There's some stuff out in far county because Coconino County is the largest county in the United States.
Hmm.
But in our local vicinity, there's only about 3 areas we can buy and place manufactured homes per the zoning code. So I'm pretty limited in that regard. But the spread's nice enough that I'm willing to go a little bit higher.
Yeah. And that's kind of the beauty of these, whether it's development or subdivision or going vertical on a property,
Yeah.
is, one of the things that I really am not a big fan of when it comes to land flipping is typically you're either hoodwinking someone, like you're buying from somebody who just doesn't know the retail value of their property. That's where some of my best deals came from in the past.
Mhm.
Or you're buying from somebody who's in a really sticky situation and they need the cash. And neither of those are great. Now, it can be fine if you're buying discounted because you're solving, say, some complicated title issue or something like that. But where I feel best is when I'm buying a property near retail or even at retail and just improving it, right? Like
Yeah.
adding equity through my effort. So that's really cool. I feel like it's probably better, easier to sleep at night when you're doing that sort of work. And that's why we're kind of leaning more towards subdivisions
Mhm.
and development projects and why I really ultimately want to go vertical. But tell me, is this the the best and highest end for Brandon Richards, or do you have a bigger goal in the future that you're working towards attaining?
I like real estate. I know just about every niche there is. I've bought almost every asset class there is, and I've done almost all the exit strategies. But honestly, it gets a little boring, kind of a squirrel guy. So this past year, I bought a software company. So that's one of my bigger pushes right now. And so although so let me back up a step. Most of my real estate business is ran by my VAs in the Philippines. So
Hmm.
my hands-on isn't too much. So most of my efforts are in the software company right now. But in the future is to build up the software and funnel it back into real estate. So I'll never get out of real estate. It just won't be like flipping. Unless the deal is great, I probably won't ever flip again. At least that's the goal. But I do enjoy it. So I buy one every once in a while. But yeah, my main focus is the software company.
So are you able to tell us about that? What is this company?
Yeah, it's pretty relevant to real estate. It's called Deal Manager Pro. It's a real estate CRM.
Oh,
So
badass.
yeah, so I was at a networking event in not Davenport, but where was that? Des Moines, Iowa, I think I was, and just talking to a random broker, and he was like, "Hey, well, I forget the conversation, but I was like, oh, I've been looking to buy some businesses," and he's like, "You want to buy a software company?" He's like, I don't know anything about software development or anything. I'm not tech savvy at all. Anyways, it all went well, and I bought it a couple months later, and so we've just been working on implementing new tools in it and making it better.
Awesome. Is that for just land, or is that land and homes, or is it for everything?
Technically, it could be used for everything. There's nothing in it that would limit the wholesaler, the flipper, or a land person from using it, or even say apartments. I wouldn't imagine too many apartment builders would need a CRM outside of their syndication CRMs, but yeah, it could be used by anybody in real estate.
That's really cool. Yeah, we we flipped, we did developments, we have a funding company, and then we have the marketing company.
Mhm.
And through that, we also got into building websites and automation tools and all these other sort of things that I never thought I'd be getting into. But
Right.
you kind of, if it's interesting to you and you fall into it, then you start. And
Yeah.
I agree, it's really rewarding to also step outside of real estate. Like we're opening a coffee shop right now as well. So
Mhm.
I feel you do kind of get bored after a while. And at least for me, I got a little restless and I'm like, I want something that, is different and more consistent. And so that's really cool. Yeah. It's a deal. What is it called again? Deal Manager Pro.
Deal Manager Pro. Yeah.
Okay. I'll make sure that that's linked everywhere as well. And then you have a podcast. Can you tell us about your podcast a little bit before we wrap up?
Sure. Yeah. It's called, as you mentioned in the beginning, the Fearless Pursuit of Freedom. I started that like 5 years ago, roughly. Went pretty strong for a couple of years. Took a 2 or 3 year break, but I'm on episode, I don't know, 78 or something. And I've interviewed everybody from like brand new wholesalers to small entrepreneurs running off-road vehicle rentals in here in Arizona to nonprofit organizations that provide food, housing, and schooling for impoverished children in Peru, and all the way up to huge syndicators. I mean, Will Crozier, yeah, all kinds of big apartment syndication names. It's just basically I reach out to people I want to learn from, and then I just grill them with questions so I can learn
Oh,
from them,
yeah.
and then
Yeah.
and everybody else can learn as well. So
Well, badass. Well, you have any other exciting things you want to talk about before we wrap?
we're moving to Alaska in a couple months.
No shit. Where?
Yeah,
Anchorage?
we don't know yet. So
Okay.
our original plan was to buy an RV and we are going to dance around a few cities that we liked, but we're gonna sell everything we have here, move up there, rent a house, and then just explore. And that's the freedom of having because the land stuff is all remote. The manufactured homes, I don't ever have to show up. The software company, I don't have to be anywhere
Yeah.
necessarily. So we're just gonna dance around for a couple months, figure out which city is the best option, and then we'll either buy or build a house and do a lot of hiking, fishing, flying, everything.
That's incredible, man.
Yeah.
Really cool. Really cool. Well, Brandon, I appreciate you. I was glad to get to know you, have this little conversation. And I'm sure you're probably going to have some folks in my audience that are interested in what you do.
Yeah.
If somebody's interested in reaching out to you, what's the best way that they could reach out to you?
I'm pretty active on Facebook.
Okay.
I don't remember you can just search Brandon Richards. You'll find me there.
That's
And I got Instagram. I don't do too much on Instagram. Yeah, probably Facebook's probably the best way.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, folks, thank you so much for attending and listening in on us today. As usual, if you need to buy or sell land, go to primelandexchange.com. If you're looking for some funding for your land flips, go to landpartnerfunding.com. And if you want to get in touch with me directly, email me at the landfixer@gmail.com, and we will see you on the next one. Cheers.
See ya.